to another episode of Monster Thoughts TV, my lovely podcast where we talk about monsters, we analyze them, we get to the heart of them. Today I have JV, and they are a voice actor. They're the co-host of the podcast Crime in Color, Wannabe Film Buffs podcast. JV reads just a bunch of podcasts, Red Wing podcast. Just a bunch of podcasts. And today we're going to be talking about Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. I'm probably saying the name wrong. Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. They are the serial killer in the movie and book Perfume, the Story of a Murderer. It's a very fantastical story. Let's just get right into the discussion. Hi.
Hi. Okay, hello.
Okay, so when and why did you first watch this film, Perfume, the Story of a Murderer? Because I know it's a pretty, I don't want to say obscure, but it's not exactly horror.
I would definitely say it is for sure really obscure. It was complete happenstance that I even found it. Back when I was in college, it was my junior year. My roommate my junior year was really cute, but we'll ignore that little bit. and he was a huge fan of horror movies. He had like over 1,000 movies in his collection, and this was one of them. And he one night was like, we need to get you to watch a horror movie, just any of them, of all of them, all of any of the kinds, just to get you to watch one of them and see what that does for you. And he had all the covers that were just sort of listed there, and this one had a very pretty cover. It had it was a woman, and there were a bunch of rose petals, and I was like, ooh, that looks fancy. Absolutely, I'll go with that. Let's give that a shot. So I watched it and have not stopped thinking about it, and that was about 12 years ago. So it sat with me, and it stayed there. I absolutely love it. I affectionately refer to this man as the frog man who had no smell.
Oh my god.
Grenouille in French, if I recall correctly, means frog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. Those little fun things.
I found it interesting because I watched this movie years ago as well. Like I don't even know HBO, one of those movie channels, and I was just like, oh, murderers, like. Yeah, he's killing girls. Let's do it. And I remember it because when you applied for the show, I'm like, oh, I saw this movie before. I'm like, oh my goodness, I was so to do this episode because I'm like, I want to talk about this movie because watching it again recently, it is so fantastic. Like we said, for those that don't know who Jean-Baptiste is, can you explain a bit about him for those who haven't watched the movie?
He is a serial killer, sort of. I don't want to say by accident, but like sort of him finding his way to being a serial killer was by accident.
That first kill was definitely an accident.
Yeah, which that was one of the interesting differences between the movie and the book, was that they made that definitely a thing that was an accident in the movie, whereas he needed her to stop screaming and didn't really have a way to do that, but there wasn't like the presence of other people nearby where he was like focused on the other people, which is why he wasn't paying attention. So it gave him that little excuse there for that first one, which I feel conflicted about knowing the source material now, but that's fine. So he is born with a wildly good sense of smell in the 1700s in Paris, in the smelly bad part of Paris.
Oh boy, yeah.
The fish smells alone from that first scene. It's like, you can't transmit smell via a movie, but I feel like it did. Becomes an orphan immediately. His mom didn't think that he was alive, and therefore just sort of moved him away with the fish.
Can we talk about this woman giving birth?
Woman, Mike.
For those that don't know, we have to talk about it. She's like at a fish stall, and there's fish guts everywhere. It's muddy and bleh. I can't even imagine the smell. Terrible. But she's in labor, and she goes behind the curtain, and she lays on the nasty floor with all the garbage and all the body parts or whatever, and she just pops this baby out, cuts the cord, and stands back up. The baby starts crying because the smells are so overwhelming and disgusting, and I'm like, this is hilarious.
She immediately goes to the gallows.
Yeah,
like, wow.
Because people heard the baby crying and were like, oh, that's a baby, she's a murderer.
She tried to kill her baby. And
yeah.
like, do you blame her?
Right?
In this economy? Girl, what? Like,
You know what? The actions of the people in the beginning of the movie when they did the whole, he will be sentenced to death at so-and-so time, and they're like yelling and calling for his death, that very much reminded me of social media and the whole public square stone throwing thing that we still do, even now.
Mob mentality is a thing that has not changed since we've existed.
Yes.
We still do it. We just like to feel that we do it more sophisticated now, which is not exactly true.
True. Yeah.
We just have the internet now, and
Yes.
therefore it is another tool for us to be able to do
stuff anonymously. We can hide behind the screen now.
Exactly. Oof. Or like, well, we'll get to it in a little bit with the end of the movie and like the way that they sort of fiddled with that at the end. But like that. Yeah, so he grows up, he starts to work for a tanner at some point. Every person who ever cares for him dies. Like, that's just a thing that I think.
Yo, it was
immediately upon like leaving him somewhere, they die.
They all die. It was so funny. It's like he's death immediately. His mom dies right after she gives birth to him. The lady at the orphanage dies when she passes him off to like the leather maker dude. And then the moment he passes him off to the perfume guy, he dies like immediately. So it's like wherever he went, it was just like death followed, which is pretty interesting. Like.
Oh, prior to that, he does murder that woman prior to...
Can we talk about that, though? You break that down. Okay, so I feel like, I don't want to, diagnose a character, but I feel like there's a bit of, like, some autism.
My little sister is autistic, and the way in which he, like, cannot handle most social situations, when he gets overstimulated, he quite literally, like, develops a disease at one point because he can't, like... because he gets overstimulated, which is something that was a thing that as soon as I saw it on this most recent rewatch, I saw it and was like, oh.
I thought that was because he was trying to get the scent of everything, and the perfumer was like, you can't get the scent of like metal and like like what are you doing? And he was just, I need to get the scent of like girls or like human girls, or that was his thing, and he couldn't do it, so he was like, I'm just gonna die now. And I'm just like, bro.
It was hyperfixation in a way that like was really a lot, and a thing that I mean, it could in theory be autism, it could be a few other things, but based on also the way that he like could not interact with other human beings, like with the exception of menial tasks here and there, and like communicating sort of just basic factual things, this sort of alienation and feeling different from other people that he just sort of had, and also everybody around him also knew. And this being during a time wherein we didn't know what to do with that.
You start the movie when he's gonna get killed or whatever because he did these terrible things. But then when you're like watching it, you're like, I was thinking like, he's not so bad. He's just a little bit weird. In the first kill, you're like, that was an accident.
Like, oh, no.
Yeah, it's like, oh man. He's like, weird things are happening around him, and like his smell is, his smell could be used for good. That was my thing. I'm like, he could use this for good. Why does it have to be evil? And then he just got obsessed with girl smells for some reason. And
the way they describe it in the book is that the smell of living things and the smell of something beautiful, they do describe it as a human smell, and they do explain it in the book as when he goes and lives in the woods for like an extended amount of time in a cave. There's like no smell here except for like one that I can identify, and I can't smell myself. And him realizing that he doesn't smell like a human is further like initially he just wants to capture all of the beautiful smells in the world.
If they added that part into the movie, that would be a greater explanation for the audience of like where his head is at, besides the whole girl smell they were pushing on you in the movie. Okay, so what was interesting or bothersome about Jean-Baptiste?
The being different and being persecuted for being different. The part of the movie that's where I'm like, oh, this feels very much like a queer narrative. I thought about it and I was like, this character is also definitively asexual. It's not clarified in the movie, but he absolutely is. The specific targets that he goes after. Also, it's interesting that in the movie that one of them was a sex worker at no point.
Yes, that was never
in the book.
That never happened. What were they in the book?
They were all virgins, and that was a specific choice.
Oh, wow.
It was because the smell that they had as untouched virgins, unpolluted by other men,
Okay.
they had a better and sweeter and more human smell
That is so creepy.
than men
That
who were
is
gross.
so
Which,
creepy.
that is
Now I'm like,
very
what?
weird.
I need to read this book because I'm like, what was the author thinking? Like,
Looking at the psychology of this character via abuse and neglect for the first, to include numerous sections wherein like there was head trauma. Not that that's like a sign that someone is going to have a rough
yeah.
time necessarily, but it doesn't help. He also is supposed to be considerably more physically unattractive in the book, but he was supposed to have a limp. He was supposed to like be very hunched over a lot of the time, scars and a lot of gone through and like had a bunch of different diseases over the course of his childhood.
Do you think they're just trying to make the most reprehensible physically and inwardly person they could to kind of justify this insatiable need for... With everything you told me, it's like he wants to be normal, so he wants like the smells of normal items. Because he just sounds like Quasimodo mixed with like, I don't know.
Quasimodo and Jeffrey Dahmer.
Someone said snorting people like Bath and Body Work candles, and I am done. That's good. He was in the movie, just straight up sniffing people like Scratch and Sniff. Like, think the depiction of him in the movie was done well, or is there anything that they could have done differently?
Side note, he in the book kills 25 people.
20.
12.
12.
It was really close, like to the point where the last bit of like narration in the movie, every bit of narration, I'm pretty sure those sections were just directly pulled from the book. Really like this character, and I really like the amount of time that they put towards explaining why he is the way he is without excusing it. I think a lot of stories in this kind of media tend to like will explain these, you know, they'll explain these characters, but they will also like, while doing so, try to make you excuse why they are the way they are. And I don't think
like Dexter.
Exactly. Not only do I like this character, I like the world that is built around this character. What it is magical realism.
But that leads me into like a question before the next question. When he's walking back to his original home with that vial, and the narrator's like, he has enough to last him to walk to anywhere in the world and have kings and queens bow his... That part sticks out to me because I just want to know your thoughts on it, because to me it's like, okay, so if you have this and you just did what you did, like you got out of a really crazy situation, why wouldn't you go and walk to, you know, kings and queens or whatever? I know they explained it in the movie. I know they said it, but I'm just like, he was such like a forward-thinking character. You finally got what you wanted, and now is it like a Frankenstein type thing? Like you get what you want, like you make the monster, and now you don't know what to do with it, so you run away from it type of deal?
The movie, I would say yes. But the book makes it a lot clearer because you flash between the mind of the crowd and the mind of Grenouille in the moment immediately prior to that with the whole, where he sort of realized this world can't give me anything that I want. To be normal and to be loved for being who I am. All I felt was hatred for everybody.
So that said, do you think his end was justified?
I don't think it was just. I don't think justice was served for anybody who like actually got harmed during this. And I do genuinely have an issue with like the fact that, yeah, all these people were just murdered, and so they put a different person to death.
Yes, that was messed up. Yeah, I didn't like that. I thought that was messed up. So I'm feeling like he's like a god type character, honestly, because that walk from that town square orgy to to back to his home was just like... Also, I mean, I'm just gonna keep going back to Frankenstein, because like in the book, when Frankenstein, he made the monster, and that was all he was focusing on, was making the monster. And then when he finally made the monster, he freaked out and left his dorm and he ran away, and the monster was just chasing him. I feel like we give this character like that type of power, like they're focused on this one thing and they do terrible things to like get whatever they want. And then they finally get it, and they're like, it's either I don't know what to do with this, or I don't want this anymore. And then like they don't know what to do, and then the thing that they wanted ends up destroying them. I mean, the monster killed Frankenstein in the Arctic, and this guy let his perfect scent kill him. Like, I was ready to see him die for all the crap he did, and then he doesn't. I thought that part was a dream. I thought he was dreaming and he was gonna end up like dying while he's fantasy is going on, but that really happens apparently, and then he goes and he gets demolished by people.
That's why I'm like, there's no sense of justice here. Like, there's the quote unquote legal justice of like, this person has now been executed technically. I guess one could in theory see that as an eye for an eye, as he like took from the people and was killed by the people.
It was what he wanted. He didn't get to die from, you know, the like public perceptions, you know, crucifixion of him. He got to die on his own terms, away from everyone, alone, like he wanted to, or whatever the case is. Would you recommend the movie to anyone?
1000%. I was so happy to rewatch it, and I'm just happy it's on Amazon Prime and I can keep watching it without having to go and purchase this movie.
Do we have any questions for JV or comments or anything? I've been saying them as we've been like going on, so probably.
Yes.
Someone said this earlier, they said the shame of public sex keeps one from talking about why or how it happened, like after the orgy and everyone was all ashamed and everything. Yeah. We have another question. Yes. If you could remake a horror film, what film would it be?
Frankenstein. Because I have written a short story. It's basically Frankenstein, but like slightly different, more modern, and definitely queer.
Okay, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. This was hilarious and fun. Can you let our viewers know where they can find you on social media?
Absolutely. So, on social media, across like various social media platforms, I am at RedBlaqueGolden, which is RedBlaque, Golden spelled exactly like you think that golden is spelled. You can find me there pretty much everywhere. I do a lot of podcasts, most of which
lots of podcasts.
Yeah, quite a few. The current ones that are running right now are JV Reads the Tea, which is a tarot podcast. I read tarot cards for my friends, which also, this is my formal invitation. I'm inviting you on to that, by the way. There's that one, and I have Birds of Prey Outcry, which is a fan fiction sequel to the Birds of Prey movie from last year. Those are the live and active ones, but you can find out about all of them on my Twitter account.
Thank you for coming on. This movie, Perfume: A Story of a Murderer, is on Amazon Prime. I recommend you watch it if you have 2 hours and some change to spare. It is a long movie. If you have 2 hours to spare, do check it out, and I will see you for the next episode of Monster Thoughts podcast. Bye!